Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we will once again take a look at this ultra rare Sony Vaio X505 and install macOS on it, making it the MacBook Air's spiritual predecessor. So let's get started. This is a Sony Vaio VGN X505. So a notebook from Sony's legendary Vaio VGN line. It released in 2004 and costs about €3,000. It features an ultra-low voltage variant of the Intel Pentium M, clocked at 1.1 GHz, featuring one core. This is accompanied by soldered-in 512 MB of DDR RAM and a 20 GB hard drive with Windows XP on it, like you can see. This is what we want to change. Let's give you more background while I disassemble the Vaio. In an earlier video, I stated that this notebook has many similarities to the first generation MacBook Air from 2008. The thinness, as you can see, is very thin. The compromised ports, the soldered-in CPU and memory, the metal body, even the iPod-style hard drive. I also talked about the relationship between Apple and Sony. And that Sony around that time had the opportunity to license macOS from Apple. So I thought, what if this notebook would have become like a predecessor to the 2008 MacBook Air? Some people apparently had the same idea, and there are many mock-ups of this notebook running macOS Tiger. But as far as I know, no one actually got OS X running on the Vaio. This is about to change. Or at least hopefully this is about to change. In the last video of this series, I tried almost everything to get macOS running on the Vaio. Different versions of iPC, iDeneb, iAtkos and Jazz, but sadly nothing worked. After I released the video, someone actually commented that I should try the Deadmoo image. Deadmoo was the start of Hackintoshing and was OS X Tiger 10.4.1 that could boot on non-Apple PCs with Intel CPUs. It uses the Chameleon bootloader and even emulates the SSE3 instruction set needed by macOS. So it's perfect for this device here. It's surprising to me that this notebook from 2004 still holds a charge on the battery here. And it also appears to be the original battery. So I think I removed all the screws. To be honest, I didn't even put all the screws back in the last time I took it apart, which makes things easier for me now. There is a screw missing. So now we can lift the case up from the back. And yeah, I'm able to remove it. Let's put it to the side here. So, as a quick reminder, we have our FireWire port, two USB-A ports, USB 2.0 of course. Here we have a funny little port here that is actually mini VGA, and I had to search for months to actually find a mini VGA cable. The first one I got was mini DVI, which is this one. But what this notebook needs is mini VGA, which is a super rare video port. Anyways, so here is our Pentium M, and here is our 512 MB of soldered on RAM. In a previous video, I replaced the mechanical hard drive, which is actually one of these iPod hard drives. I think it's 1.8 inch and has an IDE interface on the end here. And I replaced this with a flash mod kit for the iPod, I think 4th generation, which connects a compact flash card to the IDE bus. And then I used an SD card to micro SD card adapter to replace our hard drive with a micro SD card. So what I already prepared is this micro SD card, and I used DD to just copy the whole image from Deadmoo, so the already installed macOS 10 image with bootloader and everything, onto this SD card. So hopefully I should just be able to plug this in and our Vaio should boot from it, and hopefully into macOS 10.4. So let's connect it again. Sadly, I have to put the case back on because this notebook is actually so thin, especially for 2004, that it actually bends if I would try to use it like this now. Trust me, I already bent it a bit. So let's put some of the screws back in. Another similarity between this and the MacBook Air is that they both use proprietary screws. That should be enough. Now let's open the notebook back up. I will turn down the light so it's easier to see and bring in my charger. And now let's just see if we can actually boot macOS here. There's the Vaio logo. And as we can see, there is our text on the screen, our boot text. And it looks like we're booting macOS. The thing is, I already was at this point, at the spinning circle under the Apple logo here, with the last 20 or something tries I did for the last video. So this doesn't mean that it would boot, but I certainly hope that it will boot. Since this will probably take a long time, especially the first boot, I will just skip the uninteresting parts. Okay, so as you can see, nothing happened. I've now waited 30 minutes and macOS just won't boot. So let's try it again and add some boot flags. Now I need to turn on the light again. I set the -V boot flag to boot in verbose mode, which, as you can see here, displays us all kinds of information about what the kernel is currently doing on boot. So I actually know what is happening here. I had the same problem the last time I tried to install macOS, and this is probably related to the GPU not being supported by macOS. So what we could also try to do is using safe mode, which is normally used to boot the installer, but in our case it might result in the OS booting, but there will be some kexts missing because using the -X boot option, it will only load kexts that are really needed for booting macOS. So let's try that. Also add our -V and let's see if this boots. Just like last time, I will skip to the interesting part. Okay, we have a cursor here. That looks good. And I can actually move this cursor. So let's see what happens next. Yes! And it booted. We're at the macOS Tiger login screen. Since this is a already installed image called Deadmoo, we already have a user and a password, which is Bovinity. And that looks like a macOS Tiger. Yes! Okay, my date and time is obviously not set correctly, but let's angle this a bit further. The mouse seems to be working about this Mac. And we can see Intel Pentium M, 512 megabyte DDR as DRAM. We can get more info to open System Profiler. We can see the bus speed. You can see the graphics card. Yeah, you can see it's just the generic VGA compatible controller, which is probably the reason it did not boot last time. So it only boots in safe mode. We have our 2 banks with RAM. Interestingly, we have one empty bank and one containing all the memory. How about our connectivity? Does USB work? It looks like it. And Firewire. Also, nice. Okay, so there we have it. macOS 10 Tiger on our Sony Vaio VGN X505. I did now plug in my mouse to make this a little bit easier for me behind the camera. So, what classic macOS, the aqua theme just, I love macOS Tiger. It just looks great with the window decorations here. Okay, so it seems to be a very slimmed down installation. How much resources are we using? Oh wow, that's actually great. Look at this. We're completely idle, if this CPU meter here is correct. And also on the memory side, we have 332 megabytes still free. That's cool. Nice. So now that we have macOS Tiger installed, what can we actually do with it? The answer is not much, sadly. Probably because we don't have graphics drivers and are in safe mode. I tried to install Doom. It didn't work. I tried to install some other games. They all didn't work. So we're now just stuck with the default applications, which are also quite fun on macOS Tiger. For example, we have the old dashboard, which is always super nice to look at. And I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but this dock here is actually the same dock, or looks like the dock from the iPhone operating system version 2. And 3, I think they also had it on 3. iTunes doesn't launch for some reason. I don't have any internet, so all the other applications here are not really usable. But I mean, that wasn't really the idea here. The idea was just to have macOS actually running on this device and to see how it looks. And to be honest, I think it looks right at home. If we would remove the Design for Windows XP sticker here and glue some Apple logo somewhere here, I think this device actually looks a bit like an Apple device from that time period. So now that's it. We used leaked software from the first Intel Mac ever to install OS X on the thinnest notebook from 2004. And it worked. We now have an approximation of what a MacBook Air predecessor, made by Sony, could have looked like. And I have to say, I'm still sad that the deal between Apple and Sony didn't go through. Sony's design at the start of the millennium was years ahead. Now, if you liked this video, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. In the last video of this series, I trolled that could boot on non-Apple PCs with an Intel GPU. That could boot on non-Intel CPUs. That could boot on non-Intel.